I want to hear, Andrew, first from you, then from Neil, on the appropriateness of
Sure.
that.
Yeah, so I have very strong views on that based on the model that James Comey set, where somebody there, Hillary Clinton, was not being charged. Sounds familiar.
Yep.
This is not being charged. And yet a person goes out and gives their opinion with adjectives and adverbs about what they think. Entirely inappropriate. That is not the role of the Department of Justice. I don't even understand why you would engage in, just as a prosecutorial matter, your memory today is irrelevant. Whether I find you in an interview to have forgotten things, certainly to say, what do you remember about certain documents in your house, 4 or 5 years ago, I would understand that you might not remember that. To talk about your memory today, irrelevant. It is gratuitous. And it is also exactly what you're not supposed to do, which is putting your thumb on the scale that could have political repercussions. Your decision is essentially, to the vernacular in the Department of Justice, is put up or shut up. You either decide to go forward, that there is proof here, or you don't say anything at all with respect to your sort of opinions about the case. If you want to talk about something that would be legitimate, which is what President Biden would have thought at the time that he had these documents in 2017, I think that's fair game to say, at the time, there's evidence that he either remembered or didn't remember. That time period would make sense. But that is not what this report does. So I think a really fair criticism of this is, unfortunately, we're seeing a redux of what we saw with respect to James Comey at the FBI, with respect to Hillary Clinton, in terms of really not adhering to what I think are the highest ideals of the Department of Justice.
Neil, do you share that concern?
I do. So first of all, I want to defer to your pretty good guest on this, because he's a person with 21 years of prosecutorial experience, but my 2 tours at the Justice Department tell me that Andrew is stating the general way the department handles things. And indeed, not just the general way. My first tour at the Justice Department, I wrote the special counsel regulations that give this special counsel, Robert Hur, his power. And at the end of it, we actually said that there shouldn't be a public report in general, that there shouldn't be a kind of list of adjectives, to use Andrew's phrase, that would occur. Now, we certainly had those public reports, even, in the intervening times, but I'm not aware of anything quite like this, in which you've got a special counsel going after the sitting president for being too old and having a faulty memory. That is, he's come up with a clever way to get those adjectives in there by saying, well, if I brought this case to trial, this is what I would face from a jury. But as Andrew says, totally gratuitous. I mean, after all, earlier in the report, it says Biden had all sorts of innocent explanations for his behavior. So it just doesn't feel like that's doing the work. And it feels like a, too clever move by the special counsel to try and take some swipes at a sitting president. And it doesn't sit well with me at all. And I do think that it, is very much in tension with the Justice Department guidelines on special counsels. And I'm a bit surprised, frankly, that, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, evidently didn't, police those regulations at all and let that happen. I get the need for transparency. I know that, in the report goes out, the Hur report today goes and says Biden's very different than Trump, because Biden ordered full cooperation with the investigation, no invocation of executive privilege or anything like that. Trump's invoking every privilege, left, right, forward, making ones up to try and block having to tell the truth in court. Biden obviously did the reverse, but, this particular piece does not sit well with me.
There's another piece of this, Andrew, I just want to underline, which is the statement from the report. We conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter. We would reach the same conclusion even if Department of Justice policy did not foreclose criminal charges against a sitting president. Why was that necessary?
So because people would say there is a Department of Justice policy that you cannot charge a sitting president. So this is saying, you know what, leave that aside. If we could actually make the decision, if we could present this without that disability and go forward, we wouldn't do it. So that it's making it really clear to the public, cannot do this.
It seems complicated to me that they are trying to extricate the politics of this with one hand while then sort of entering other elements that seem very political with another.
I have two words for you: James Comey. So what he did was stating the obvious, which was there was no criminal case against Hillary Clinton. That there was just, to me, there was never going to be proof beyond a reasonable doubt in that case. And that was what was found. And the appropriate thing to do there is to just say, we're declining. There is insufficient proof. It is not a time to have a press conference to state, oh, by the way, let me give you my personal views. And that is why here you really are supposed to be, the sort of better course is to stick to the facts. That's why I was very interested and always very concerned when I heard who was appointed, whether they were going to use adjectives and adverbs. Adjectives and adverbs, those have no place at this point. If you indict somebody and convict them and then want to talk about the case, maybe then. This is the complete opposite. It is worth noting, though, to me, this is sort of in the weeds about the propriety of how this is done, and certainly, politically, it will take on that spin. But the big take-home is that this investigation, which is incredibly thorough for a year, that went through everything, is there's no criminal case to be brought here. There is no obstruction. There was cooperation. And just to be fair to Rob Hur, he does contrast this with what he knows about the Trump case to talk about why these are dramatically different cases. And you know what? That is what you do in the Department of Justice. The facts matter, and you draw those distinctions. And that is actually what the public is now going to have to look at and see, do they think those are meaningful distinctions?